So let me just say how delighted I am to be here today. As Luis pointed out, this is my 7th visit to Mexico since May of 2017. And as Luis said, I am pretty sure it's not my last visit for the year. And I really want to say to Luis, to Ildefonso, I share with you a very great pride in the strong relationship that exists today between Canada and Mexico, and in the strong relationship we have been building together. This is something that our country very much believes in, and we appreciate very much our strong collaboration with Mexico. We know that North America is better off when we all work together. Canada believes in trade, and we know that all partners benefit from increased trade. We know that modernized NAFTA is very much an interest of all 3 NAFTA countries, and we have been working now for nearly a year on the modernization of NAFTA. We have made significant progress, and Canada also believes that a win-win-win NAFTA modernization outcome is absolutely achievable, and that is something which we are working hard on, and that Secretaries Videgaray and Guajardo and I affirmed in our bilateral meeting focused on NAFTA this morning. My colleagues and I look forward to meeting later today with President Peña Nieto, and after that we look forward to meeting with President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador and his team, and we look forward to working in collaboration with all of our partners in Mexico to continue to build on the very deep, very strong relationship we have today. Canada stands with Mexico in defense of our shared North American values of freedom, democracy, diversity, and inclusion. And I know that together we can continue to advance the best interests of all of our people and to ensure that our shared continent, North America, remains prosperous and peaceful in the 21st century. Thank you. Merci. Muchas gracias.
Good morning. Good morning. My question is for Mr. Guajardo, but also for Ms. Freeland. It's about the sunset clause, the termination clause that Mr. Trump is insisting upon. The reason I ask this is there is anxiety in Canada about Mr. Trump's enthusiasm for doing a deal with Mexico, and there is a concern about Canada being thrown under the bus. So my question is this: what is the basis for your optimism, or are you optimistic about the chances for a deal in the next few months? And is there any conditions under which your country would accept a deal that includes a sunset clause?
The idea is to respond in the language the question has been asked, or should we respond in Spanish? Okay. Given the fact that you ask in English, I will answer you in English. Well, first of all, let me tell you that if Mexico, just as strongly as Mr. Freeland has been through the last 11 months, we have been very, very, very specific, saying that one of the highest values of NAFTA is being a trilateral agreement that reflects a very high integration of the North American continent. The fact that this time we're going to Washington for a bilateral is just a sequence that has been part of this trilateral effort to modernize NAFTA. I don't remember, Chrystia, you were in Washington just recently in a bilateral with Bob Lighthizer. So let's not get confused ourselves. It is clear that it's just a method. It's not necessarily moving into any direction that is not a trilateral agreement, and therefore we have been working together from the very beginning. Now, in terms of the items of what is being negotiated, let me tell you that one of the things that has been very clear for me after talking to all the leaders in the business sector, and mostly to the auto industry, is that most of the CEOs that I have been talking to, they say the auto industry in North America can commit with a great effort to strengthen regional content and to really push for a much better condition for labor and workers in the auto industry, It is a doable effort, but as long as there is not uncertainty in the horizon. That means that you cannot ask the auto industry to design a new business model. At the same time, you tell them, but look, in 5 years, we may change our minds. Nobody is going to invest a single Canadian dollar, Mexican peso, or a dollar in an industry that does not give certainty for the long term. That responds very clearly your question about sunset.
Before, the question was not for me, but before Chrystia responds, I cannot resist saying something about your question, because I remember vividly being in Toronto February last year, and there was a lot of talk about Canada throwing Mexico under the bus. And I remember when Chrystia, we were like this, standing in a conference room in Toronto, and she said it very clearly. NAFTA is a trilateral deal for Canada, and we will continue to work in a trilateral mode because we believe in that. Well, I can tell you that for Mexico, NAFTA is a trilateral agreement, and we will continue to work like that. We understand the concept, we understand the challenges, but this is fundamentally based on our values and our convictions.
Well, I almost don't want to say anything, Steve, because the answers from Ildefonso and Luis have been so much in line with my own views. But let me just, for emphasis, speak to the 2 points. Exactly as Ildefonso and Luis have said, Canada very much believes in NAFTA as a trilateral agreement, and that is simply a statement of the reality. NAFTA is a trilateral trading relationship and trade deal. It has been in place for nearly a quarter century. Supply chains, business relationships have been built on that basis. And from the perspective of the Canadian government and a strong majority of Canadians, it's a deal that is working. And so we are very committed to modernizing NAFTA as a trilateral agreement. As Ildefonso said, while the ultimate deal will be a trilateral modernization of a deal which is trilateral, it's quite normal to have bilateral meetings in the course of what has already been a very lengthy, very intensive negotiation process. I had a bilateral meeting this morning with Ildefonso and Luis, focused chiefly on NAFTA. As Ildefonso pointed out at the beginning of June, I had a bilateral meeting with Ambassador Lighthizer speaking about NAFTA and our trading relationship. And, you know, our Mexican friends have also traveled to Canada often for bilateral meetings. So the fact that we certainly have to have, and I think we'll need to continue to have, some bilateral meetings to talk about the bilateral issues. It is a trilateral relationship. It will need to be a modernized trilateral deal, and it's a trilateral negotiation. On the sunset clause, let me just point out a couple of things. Canada is strongly opposed to the addition of a sunset clause because we feel it runs counter to the whole idea and purpose of NAFTA and of the NAFTA modernization. NAFTA has been around for nearly a quarter century. If we all do a good job, we're going to create a great modernized NAFTA, which will endure for another quarter century and beyond. We think that it would be destructive for the trading relationships to build in a moment of built-in uncertainty every 5 years. And in that position, we are strongly supported, not only by Canadian business, but also by Mexican business, and very much by the U.S. business community. Ildefonso has mentioned another important element, which is this NAFTA modernization negotiation includes, as is well known to people, significant conversations about modernizing the rules of origin. These could mean significant changes for the automotive industry, which is so important for all three of our countries. And as we know, the production cycle for building a car, the production cycle for ordering the parts for that car is long. And so for us to successfully update the rules of origin in NAFTA, which I think we are well on our way to doing, But then to say to all of our car companies and our car parts manufacturers, guess what? In addition to asking you to implement these changes, every 5 years you might have to deal with a whole new set of changes. We think that that is really unreasonable and not the right approach to having a successful, productive, prosperous North American automotive sector which can take on the world.
Cerramos con la pregunta de Isabela González de Reforma, por favor.
Ante la presión del presidente Donald Trump de acelerar la renegociación del Tratado de Libre Comercio, ¿cómo va a responder México? ¿Cerrarán filas con Canadá? Y si entre ustedes en esta junta han hablado de un plan B si Trump decide salirse del tratado. Gracias.
Okay. Muchas gracias, Luis. Yeah, let me just make a few concluding comments about our approach to NAFTA and 232. So when it comes to NAFTA, the Canadian approach from day one has been to be prepared for moments of drama. We said that the day before the negotiations began. We prepared Canadians for that likelihood. And by the way, that is the nature of all trade negotiations. Ildefonso and I remember dramatic moments in the TPP trade negotiations. Certainly Canada's experience in negotiating with the EU and concluding our CETA agreement included moments of drama. The NAFTA negotiation has been no exception, and I fully expect some dramatic moments in our future. The Canadian position from the outset has been and will continue to be that we are a trading nation. We very much believe that trade benefits our country and benefits our trading partners. And we think modernization of NAFTA, which has been around for 25 years, nearly 25 years, is a good idea and will bring benefits to the people of all three countries of North America. Canadians are good at compromise. And in the negotiations, we are always looking for the creative compromise solution, which will bring a win-win-win outcome for each of the three countries. Having said that, we're also very clear that our job is to stand firm in the defense of the national interest. And we also believe at the end of the day that these negotiations have to be based on facts and based on the economic reality that NAFTA has brought great benefit to all three countries. When it comes to 232 on autos, Luis referred to the presentation that the Mexican ambassador made during the hearings in Washington last week. Kirsten Hillman, Canada's deputy ambassador to the United States, who actually happens to be our lead negotiator for TPP, made a very strong presentation as well. The Canadian view is that the very notion that Canadian cars and car parts could pose a national security threat to the United States is frankly absurd. And let's remember that the rationale behind Section 232 is national security. And we simply do not see the logic behind an argument that says a car manufactured in Canada with very, very many U.S. parts, by the way, could somehow pose a national security threat. The trade in cars and car parts between Canada and the United States is very significant, balanced, and mutually beneficial. It's about $70 billion going in each direction, and we made that clear in our presentation. As Ildefonso pointed out very correctly, one of the important moments in the hearings in Washington last week was that U.S. stakeholders spoke out against the imposition of 232 tariffs on cars and car parts. That is very significant. Now, certainly Canada and Mexico were clear that we were opposed, as were the EU and other U.S. trading partners, but U.S. industry itself made very strong arguments about how this would be detrimental to the United States itself. And so I am very confident, as I am about the trading relationship overall, that at the end of the day, common sense will prevail. At the end of the day, economic rationality and the pursuit of real economic benefit for all of our countries is going to prevail. And that's why I share the optimism of my Mexican counterparts, that we are making solid progress on NAFTA and we are going to keep on working. We would like to achieve a deal as soon as possible. I had a good conversation with Ambassador Lighthizer on Monday, and I think, now that the Mexican election is passed, we are all committed to